In the very first Sonic game, there's a level called Labyrinth Zone. It has this mechanic where you'd have to sometimes go underwater, and in order to stay underwater, you needed to find air bubbles so that you wouldn't drown. But if you stayed underwater too long without finding any bubbles, this music started to play with a countdown timer until... Oxygen not included is that moment, but it never stops and the water is full of pee. Oxygen Not Included is a management-style survival game where the survival is optional and the management style is an OSHA war crime. You are tasked with keeping a colony of quasi-human duplicants alive long enough to cause a time paradox capable of creating DLC, but that's a story for later. Each member of your colony possesses the average IQ of a hospital's newborn infant ward, and just like newborns, if we don't help them eat and go to the bathroom, they will make a mess and die. Horribly. So why do we put ourselves through this? Why play a game so obtuse and opposed to our success? Simple, you shouldn't. This game is ridiculous. It will slowly invade your headspace until you don't even question why it's 3 AM and you're looking at a spreadsheet titled Counterflow Heat Exchange. But for some, that's the appeal. And if a game with mechanical depth on par with the Marianas Trench appeals to you, then this may be one of the cutest and most rewarding games you will ever play. Each game starts with you choosing which asteroid you'll begin your inevitable colony collapse on. Each planetoid comes with unique pros and cons, and their working environments can range from mildly dangerous to Chernobyl's Unit 4 nuclear reactor. I'd highly recommend sticking with the default Terra asteroid for your first playthrough, but hey, you do you. After generating your new stress headache of a level, you get to pick your dupes. What are dupes exactly? Basically, a species of unpaid interns. And just like unpaid interns, we want them motivated to do a good job. And how do we do that? Interest and morale. You can re-roll your first 3 dupes to have at least 1 guaranteed interest. These are skills that they like learning and give a small morale bonus to as you progress through their skill tree. So why does all this matter? Because while you could theoretically build a dupe that's good at everything, that means they'd be too smart for their own good. They'd know they were underpaid and probably going to die. This leads to unnecessary stress. If our unpaid interns get too stressed, they stop working and fall back on unhealthy habits. Some of these habits include vomiting, property destruction, and deadliest of all, binge eating. There's something special about losing a playthrough because Liam slept next to someone who snored and then ate all the colony's food rations strictly out of spite. Personally, I always roll at least a digger and a researcher. The third one is usually construction, ranching, or farming, depending on my game plan going in. You can also assign them some nifty hats based on their profession. Hat. As for the traits, positives are nice to have, but not mandatory, but I would recommend re-rolling based on some of the more dangerous negative traits like bottomless stomach, narcoleptic, and slow learner. Don't spend too much time min-maxing your starters. You get options to add new dupes to your future mass grave site every few days. So, now that we're finally in-game, what exactly are we managing? Oxygen,
power,
temperature, lighting,
ventilation,
farming, oxygenation. Really basic stuff, but the main things you want to worry about when first starting out are air, water, and food. So, on to the big question. Is the oxygen not included? Kinda. You get some, and some awful food, but honestly that's the least of your problems. For now. You know what isn't included? Toilets. And unless you want these dupes waiting around in a shallow pool of piss, you better build some and fast. So start digging, find a water supply, and hollow out a nice little bathroom, preferably away from the water supply. Germs are a thing in this game, and you don't want to be mixing toilet water and drinking water. After that, build some beds, and boom, basic colony. So what now? Now we just deal with problems as they come up. Now, that oxygen is not going to last forever, so how do we make more? Well, hell if your dupes know. Guess we need a research station. Okay, but that needs power. Time to build a big hamster wheel and a very safe-looking battery. Welcome to the game loop. All problems have solutions, and those solutions require power and resources. Figuring out how to fuel the solution to your problem is what it's all about. So, with all that in mind, there's just 3 rules for success and oxygen not included. Rule number 1, the bathrooms must flow. Number 2, your dupes will take any opportunity to trap themselves when you aren't looking.
Oh my god, stop bro, I'm stuck!
Number 3, heat is both your greatest enemy and most powerful resource. There's also a rule 0 for this game. You can't get something for nothing. Every input will always output equal or fewer resources. There's absolutely, positively, no way around this. So, let's go over some of the problems you'll face in the early to mid game. Food is one of the first things you'll start to run out of, so it should be an early priority. There's two main ways to acquire calories in this game, the vegan way and the smart way. The main difference between them being one scales off your available space while the other one scales off cruelty. This game has a lot of plants, and they are the easiest source of early game nourishment. Mealwood is a very versatile and unfussy plant. Sure, the food made from it is basically those bug bars from Snowpiercer, but it'll get you through the early game. Plants that produce better food generally require very specific environments to grow in, but Mealwood is always there for you. This game also has a lot of critters.
What the dog doing?
And critters are great because on top of being made from future barbecue, they usually also serve some kind of utility function. They can also be evolved via environment or diet. For example, hatches. Hatches eat rock and poop coal. This is a great way to get your coal generators online pretty early on. They can also be evolved via diet to be better at excreting coal or even refined materials. Or they can be forcibly evolved into meat. Ranching is super powerful in general and can help you get late game materials fairly early on. Drekos can get you early fiber and plastics, slicksters produce oil and petroleum, and shine bugs stress out everyone who's trying to sleep, which is why we relocate them to the afterlife. Finally, good food is a great way to boost your dupe's morale, so at some point you're going to want to dedicate a chef to your colony. Managing food production requirements for your plantations and ranches is a never-ending balancing act, but a key component to achieving this game's true end goal. But in order to master this, first we're going to have to get you HVAC certified. Gas, liquid, and solid. Almost everything in this game exists in one of those three states, and just like a Linux developer with a collection of programming socks, knowing how to transition is important. Everything in this game has a freezing, melting, and boiling point. Don't look at those other properties, those are for nerds. So, like two proctophiliacs on a date, let's start with gas. In case you haven't noticed yet, there's a lot more than just oxygen here. That black creeping cloud at the bottom of your base, unbreathable carbon dioxide. Your dupes produce a little bit of it every time they exhale, and guess what? That cloud is only going to grow. Now you might think to yourself, there's a building for this. I just need to plop down a carbon skimmer. Wrong! In the early game, the best way to deal with CO2 is just to dig a deeper pit to let it settle in. It's heavier than oxygen, so now it's just a problem for later. And besides, just because it's unbreathable doesn't mean it's useless. CO2 can be used to make soda pop, sustain a slickster ranch, or even launch rockets. Almost all gases in this game have multiple uses. So, how do we take full advantage of this? Welcome to HVAC certification. Gas pumps can be used to move gas from one location to another, like storage or the vast, uncaring void of space. Or turn a room into a perfect vacuum. Just make sure that when you're dealing with hot gases, like say 500 degrees Celsius hydrogen spewing out of a vent, you make your pump out of something a little bit more heat resistant than copper. Just because a building is solid doesn't mean it can't become a liquid. Here's a free tip regarding gases. Chlorine. While exposing your dupe's eyes to bleach miasma is stressful for them, it's well worth it. Why? Because it kills germs. And while you could use it to clear up slime lung or gamer girl body odor, that's not its most powerful use. The objective best way to stretch your water supply is to vacuum out a room and replace its atmosphere with chlorine so you can run your toilet system through it. That's right, we're on man versus wild rules.
And the only thing I can do is to drink my own pee.
No, there is no single building that will do this for you. This game expects you to construct a water treatment facility. Did I mention this game has a fully functional programming system built into it to allow you to fully automate almost any task? Speaking of plumbing, take everything I just said about the previous section and apply it to liquids. Aside from waste management, lots of things in this game require liquid inputs and outputs. Better bathrooms, farms, and most importantly, cooling systems. Now, let's talk about just about every machine in this game produces some amount of heat, which gets dispersed into our closed environment. If you start noticing your plant production stifling, colony collapse is not far behind. It isn't noticeable right away, but just like our planet, it's only going to get warmer. Welcome to the endgame. The best summary I can give is,
we should take
our heat output
and push it somewhere else!
As our colony scales, we need to figure out some way to deal with our heat output. But how? The steam turbine. Every input yields an equal or lesser output, and this baby takes in heat and outputs sweet, sweet watts. Well, it takes in steam. This means the best way for us to deal with our heat is to take as much of it as possible and dump it into water where it can be turned into steam and eaten by a turbine. Combine this with a thermal aqua tuner, a device that removes heat from liquid and disperses it into the surrounding environment, and we can build ourselves a cooling loop. Fun fact, polluted water freezes at -20 as opposed to regular water, which freezes at 0. We can run this through our thermal aqua tuner plus steam turbine combo to use it to cool down the oxygen in our base. Now I can see the gears turning in some of your minds. That's right, our AC is made possible by Lindsay's diarrhea. This is the only way we can ensure that our colony does not experience a wet bulb event. It's also how we can accomplish some truly insane feats of production later on. Now, armed with this entirely useless engineering degree, you should be able to fumble your way through a first playthrough. Don't worry about making things look nice. There's always going to be a more efficient way to solve your problems, but until you know what you're doing, just run with whatever jank solutions you come up with. That's half the fun. So, good luck out there on your way to beating the game for the first... I have played you for a fool. Did you think that simply going to space and constructing a monument is enough to beat this game? Oh, you poor sexy moron. No, if you want to earn the respect of the hyper-fixated weirdos of the internet, you have to go even further beyond. You have to become infinitely self-sustaining. So how do you do that? Through a complicated balancing act involving geysers, plants, critters, and resource recycling. Or we can break Rule 0. Welcome to the wonderful world of overcomplicated builds. I cannot stress enough how absolutely bonkers some of these are. Some, like self-powered oxygen machines, aka SPOMs, can be built in the mid-game and will help make your playthrough way easier. But some of the more ambitious projects, like sour gas boilers, require lots of late-game materials and a ton of planning. I won't go into the math behind it, but by pushing the game's thermal mechanics to their absolute limits, you can convert materials into other materials at such a high efficiency that it creates what we refer to as a resource positive effect. The fact that the game lets you get away with this feels absolutely incredible. I'll cover two of my favorite Rule 0 breaking builds in this video. The rocket chimney is simpler than most big builds, but devastatingly effective. When you first start building rockets, you'll probably be doing it in the space biome. This is alright early on because rockets generate a lot of exhaust and heat when they launch, so not having that bleed into your base is generally pretty good. But that's heat that could be turned into precious power, so how do we make this work for us? By launching our rockets from a deep and insulated pit. How does this help? Well, a steam rocket emits exhaust at a steady rate until it leaves the planet, but it doesn't start burning its fuel until it's in orbit. So, by running steam rockets on continuous short-distance trips, we get them to emit vast quantities of steam for almost nothing. This gets us more water than we put into it in the form of steam, making us not only water positive, but thanks to the army of steam turbines on the side of the chimney, energy positive as well. My second favorite build is basically just a human rights violation, which can best be summed up as my dupes work hard, so I forcibly vacation them in a hotel with a 1-star rating on TripAdvisor. But what's so special about this hotel, you ask? Well, let me tell you. Each room comes with 3 things: a toilet, a busted mini fridge, and a manual generator. You know what isn't included? Oxygen. Why? Because we're abusing gasping mechanics. When a dupe starts to suffocate, they will seek out the nearest oxygen tile and gasp on it. They will consume the same amount of oxygen as they normally do, but they recover faster than their oxygen consumption rate. So we just include a tiny little vent that passes through the minimal amount of oxygen that is required to gasp. Oh, did I mention the food is rotten? On top of being on the constant brink of asphyxiation, we're giving them food poisoning. This means that our dupe's vacation consists of running on a hamster wheel, eating rancid food, throwing up, and then gasping for their life. You may think that's cruel. Well, you'd be right, but what are vomit and diarrhea if not just future drinkable water? This is an energy, oxygen, and water positive process. I love this game. Oxygen not included is insane. You probably shouldn't play it. It will cause you to become more creative with bodily fluids than Andres Serrano. However, if you love creative problem solving and have a desire to launch unpaid interns into orbit, you won't find a better game out there. A final note, this game has extensive mod support, everything from quality of life upgrades to new buildings to complete reworks. The devs are also constantly updating and improving this game several years post-launch and have even integrated some of the more popular mods into the core game. They're great. Now, I've only covered a small fraction of what the base game truly has to offer, so if you have any interest in actually learning to play the game, I'd highly recommend checking out channels like Francis John, Bothgar, and Tony Advanced Tony. They're actually good at the game and do fantastic playthroughs and tutorials. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I'm still trying to figure out what kind of videos I want to make for this channel, so please leave your feedback in the comments. I really appreciate it. Have a great day and stay safe out there.